movies might just be the original Asian fusion, and Bruce Lee is the man who bridged the gap to American culture.
IP Man and Bruce Lee, two of the greatest martial artists the world has ever known. Despite Bruce's global fame and raw talent, IP Man could take him down with just one finger. Sounds impossible? The rise of IP Man, from student to grandmaster. Like all legends, IP Man had a humble beginning, but his journey from a curious child to a grandmaster is nothing short of fascinating. Born on October 1, 1893, in Foshan, Guangdong, China, IP Man was the third of 4 children in a wealthy family. His upbringing was privileged in many ways. He enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, receiving a traditional Chinese education, and his family connections gave him access to opportunities many others could only dream of. But even with all the luxuries, something was missing. From a young age, IP Man felt a pull toward martial arts, a path that would not only define his life, but also transform the world of Wing Chun. IP Man's fascination with martial arts began early. In Foshan, martial arts were part of the local culture, and young IP Man couldn't help but be drawn to it. But it wasn't until he turned 12 that this curiosity turned into something serious. That's when IP Man's martial arts journey truly began, and the man who would change his life forever entered the picture: Chan Hua-shun. Chan Hua-shun was a Wing Chun master, well known in Foshan for his skills. However, he wasn't young when IP Man approached him. In fact, Chan was nearing the end of his martial arts career, but despite his age, he agreed to teach IP Man. This was a big deal for IP Man. Chan Hua-shun was selective about who he trained, and IP Man became one of the last students he ever took on. It was a golden opportunity for young IP. But it came with its challenges. Chan Hua-shun's health was already declining, and after only 3 years of training, Chan suffered a stroke and was forced to retire. But even though their time together was short, the foundation of IP Man's Wing Chun was solidified during these years. Chan Hua-shun's teachings emphasized the core principles of Wing Chun: efficiency, precision, and directness. These lessons stayed with IP Man, becoming the building blocks of his future mastery. When Chan Hua-shun retired, IP Man wasn't left without guidance. Chan had other students, and one of them, Long Bik, became IP Man's next teacher. Long Bik wasn't just any student. He was the son of Liang Jian, a Wing Chun master, and one of Chan Hua-shun's own mentors. This made the connection between Liang Bik and IP Man even more significant, almost like a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. Under Liang Bik's guidance, IP Man's understanding of Wing Chun evolved in ways he hadn't imagined. Liang Bik was more than just a martial artist. He was a true master of refinement. He wasn't teaching IP Man how to punch harder or kick faster. No, he was teaching him how to fight smarter. With Liang Bik, IP Man learned how to hone his techniques, make every movement count, and use his body structure to overpower his opponents with minimal effort. This wasn't the flashy brute force martial arts that some people think of. It was calculated, efficient, and elegant. Liang Bik's training helped elevate IP Man's skills to a whole new level, turning him from a promising student into a future master. But the road to mastery isn't smooth, and for IP Man, a pivotal moment came when he faced a defeat that shook his confidence to its core. During his time under Liang Bik's tutelage, IP Man had grown confident, perhaps even a little cocky. He was undefeated in many of his sparring sessions, and this gave him a sense of superiority. So, when one of his classmates named Lai introduced him to a renowned martial artist named Long Bik, also spelled Liang Bik, IP Man was eager to prove himself. He saw this as another opportunity to demonstrate his skills. The duel was set, and IP Man went in brimming with confidence. But what happened next was something he didn't expect. Long Bik effortlessly outmaneuvered him. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a humbling experience. Lung's speed and precision left IP Man bewildered. Every move he made was countered with ease, and before he knew it, he had lost. For IP Man, this wasn't just about losing a fight. It was a blow to his ego. He had spent years training, believing he was on the path to mastery, but this defeat made him question everything. IP Man could have walked away from martial arts right then. The defeat was so demoralizing that he even considered hiding his knowledge of Kung Fu. But instead, he chose a different path. Rather than letting this defeat define him, IP Man decided to learn from it. He swallowed his pride and sought further training under Lung Beak. This was a turning point in IP Man's life. Instead of letting his defeat break him, he used it to fuel his desire for improvement. Training with Lung Beak opened IP Man's eyes to the deeper aspects of Wing Chun. It wasn't just about physical strength or even technical skill. It was about understanding the philosophy behind the movements, about using your opponent's energy against them, and about always staying one step ahead. Lung Beak's teachings brought a new level of sophistication to IP Man's Wing Chun, helping him refine his techniques even further. This experience forced IP Man to reevaluate his approach to martial arts. He realized that true mastery wasn't about winning every fight. It was about constantly improving, learning from your failures, and embracing the journey. From that moment on, IP Man's perspective on martial arts changed. He no longer sought to simply win fights. He sought to understand Wing Chun on a deeper level. This marked the beginning of his transformation from a skilled fighter into a grandmaster. Through humility, discipline, and a relentless drive for self-improvement, IP Man would go on to become one of the most respected martial artists in history, eventually passing on his knowledge to students like Bruce Lee, who would carry his legacy forward. Bruce Lee's early life, a rebel with raw talent. Before Bruce Lee became a global martial arts icon and Hollywood legend, he was just a rebellious kid from the streets of Hong Kong, with an attitude and a wild streak that often got him into trouble. It's hard to imagine someone so polished and controlled in his later years as being a street brawler. But in his youth, Bruce was far from the disciplined martial artist we know today. Born on November 27, 1940 in San Francisco, Bruce moved to Hong Kong with his family when he was still a baby. He grew up in a chaotic post-war Hong Kong, where life wasn't easy and the streets were rough. Bruce's natural inclination toward fighting emerged early on, and it wasn't long before he found himself in street gangs, throwing punches rather than playing the part of a quiet kid. As a teenager, Bruce had a reputation for getting into street fights. He wasn't afraid to scrap with anyone who crossed him. The street gang he led, known as the Junction Street Tigers, was infamous for their brawls with other gangs. Bruce was charismatic, quick-tempered, and always ready to throw down. He had this natural raw talent for fighting. It wasn't about technique or style back then. It was more about survival and street credibility. The rawness of his approach made him a force to be reckoned with on the streets. His smaller size didn't hold him back either. Bruce had a knack for moving fast, hitting hard, and knowing exactly when to strike. But as he got older, Bruce's street brawls became more dangerous. His parents, particularly his father, became concerned that if Bruce didn't find a more structured way to channel his energy, he would end up seriously hurt or in big trouble with the law. Bruce needed discipline. His father knew this and began looking for someone who could teach Bruce martial arts, not just to make him a better fighter, but to give him the focus and control he so desperately lacked. Bruce's journey to martial arts mastery was about to begin, but it wouldn't be a straight shot to greatness. Instead, it started with a simple introduction and a hesitant teacher. Bruce's formal martial arts training began with an introduction to IP Man, one of the most respected Wing Chun masters in Hong Kong at the time. This connection came through a mutual friend, William Chung, who was already a student of IP Man. William recognized that Bruce had the raw talent, but lacked the discipline and technique that a true martial artist needed. He thought Wing Chun, with its emphasis on precision and efficiency, would be the perfect style for Bruce. So, through Chung's recommendation, Bruce was introduced to IP Man in the mid-1950s, when he was just 15 years old. At first, it seemed like a match made in heaven. Bruce was eager to learn, and IP Man's reputation as a master was unmatched. But there was an obstacle: Bruce's mixed-race heritage. Bruce was of Eurasian descent, with a Chinese father and a European mother, and this was a significant issue in the martial arts world at the time. Many traditional martial arts schools in Hong Kong had an unwritten rule. Martial arts, particularly Chinese martial arts, were reserved only for pure-blooded Chinese students. Teaching a foreigner, or someone of mixed heritage, was considered taboo, and this led to IP Man's initial hesitation. IP Man wasn't just a teacher, he was deeply connected to the martial arts traditions and customs that had been passed down for generations. Teaching Bruce wasn't just about skill, it was about breaking a cultural boundary that many in the martial arts community weren't ready to cross. So, even though Bruce had undeniable potential, IP Man hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't think Bruce could be a good student, it was the backlash from his other students and the martial arts community that worried him. There was a deep-seated prejudice against teaching martial arts to anyone who wasn't fully Chinese, and IP Man knew that accepting Bruce could cause tension within his school. But IP Man also saw something in Bruce. The kid had a fire in him, a drive that couldn't be ignored. Bruce's raw energy and passion for martial arts were undeniable, and despite the potential cultural backlash, IP Man eventually agreed to take him on, but with a slight twist. Rather than teaching Bruce directly himself, IP Man assigned one of his most senior students, Wing Chun, to oversee Bruce's early training. Wing Chun was more than capable of handling Bruce's fiery energy. Known for his own skills in Wing Chun, Wong had a reputation as a tough and no-nonsense instructor. He wasn't going to take it easy on Bruce just because he was young or new to the discipline. Under Wong's guidance, Bruce began learning the fundamentals of Wing Chun, focusing on close-range combat, efficient strikes, and precise movements. The training wasn't glamorous, it was repetitive and methodical, but Bruce thrived under Wong's tough love approach. The street fighter in Bruce began to transform into something more, a martial artist with control and purpose. Even though IP Man wasn't Bruce's primary instructor in those early days, he kept a close eye on his new students' progress. IP Man saw how Bruce quickly absorbed the techniques and adapted them to his own style. It didn't take long for Bruce to start standing out, not just because of his talent, but because of his unique background and the way he applied Wing Chun in unexpected ways. But Bruce's time in IP Man's school wasn't without its challenges. Some of the other students resented him, not just for his mixed-race heritage, but also for how quickly he was progressing. There were whispers and complaints that Bruce didn't deserve to be there, that he wasn't fully Chinese and therefore wasn't worthy of learning the secrets of Wing Chun. This prejudice created tension in the school, and Bruce had to navigate not just the physical demands of his training, but also the social dynamics that came with being different. Despite these obstacles, Bruce remained determined. His early training with Wing Chun and the oversight of IP Man laid the foundation for the martial arts philosophy that would later define his career. The street fighter was still there, but now he was learning discipline, precision, and control, traits that would eventually turn him into the martial arts legend we know today. Wing Chun, the art of minimal movement and maximum impact. Wing Chun doesn't rely on flashy moves or brute strength. Instead, it's all about economy of motion and precision, making every movement count. In other words, it's the art of doing the most damage with the least amount of effort. And that's where the magic happens. Wing Chun is designed for close combat, meaning it's meant for situations where you're practically chest to chest with your opponent. It's not about fancy footwork or long-range attacks, but about quick, direct strikes that neutralize a threat before they even know what hit them. The philosophy behind Wing Chun is simple. Why waste energy when you can end a fight with a single, well-placed movement? One of the key principles of Wing Chun is efficiency. Every move has a purpose, and there's no room for unnecessary flash. You'll notice that Wing Chun practitioners focus on directness, taking the shortest path to strike an opponent. If someone throws a punch, Wing Chun teaches you to block and counter in one seamless motion. There's no stepping back or retreating. Instead, you move forward, controlling the space between you and your opponent. This close-quarters combat style is perfect for real-world situations where fights are fast and brutal, unlike the drawn-out choreographed battles you see in movies. Wing Chun also emphasizes the idea of using your opponent's force against them. Rather than meeting strength with strength, Wing Chun teaches you to redirect an opponent's energy. So if someone's coming at you full force, instead of bracing for impact, you'd step into their attack, deflect it, and counter with your own strike. It's about working smarter, not harder. And that's why it's such a powerful martial art for people of all sizes and strengths. You don't have to be the biggest or strongest person in the room to dominate in Wing Chun. You just need to know how to use your body's natural structure and movement to your advantage. Now, if anyone embodied the philosophy of Wing Chun, it was IP Man. The way he practiced and taught this martial art was nothing short of masterful. Decades of dedication allowed him to perfect his technique to a level that most people could only dream of. One of the most fascinating things about IP Man's mastery of Wing Chun was how little he needed to do to overpower an opponent. While other fighters might throw a series of punches or kicks, IP Man could control a fight with a simple finger jab. That's right, a single finger. You see, in Wing Chun, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about where and when you strike. A master like IP Man didn't need to rely on raw strength. Instead, he used precision to target his opponent's weak spots. Wing Chun focuses on vital areas of the body, places like the throat, eyes, and solar plexus. These are spots where even the lightest touch, if delivered with perfect timing and technique, can incapacitate someone. That's why IP Man didn't need to use a lot of movement or force. His mastery of Wing Chun allowed him to understand the human body's vulnerabilities and exploit them effortlessly. This brings us to the famous one-finger theory. It sounds almost like something out of a kung fu movie, but there's a reason people talk about it. The idea is that a Wing Chun master like IP Man could theoretically defeat an opponent using just a single finger. And it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. In Wing Chun, every strike is aimed at critical points on the body. A well-placed finger jab to the throat, for example, could collapse an opponent's windpipe, rendering them unable to continue the fight. Similarly, a strike to the eyes could temporarily blind them, giving the Wing Chun practitioner all the time they need to finish the fight. It's not about brute force, it's about using precision to achieve maximum impact with minimal effort. Wing Chun teaches you to stay relaxed, to conserve energy, and to strike only when the time is right. So while other fighters might wear themselves out with big, showy moves, a Wing Chun master like IP Man could calmly wait for the perfect moment to strike, often with just a finger and often with devastating results. What's really interesting about IP Man is that his skill only seemed to improve with age. Unlike other martial artists who might rely on their youth and physical strength, IP Man's abilities transcended his physical limitations. Even in his later years, when most people would be slowing down, IP Man continued to refine his techniques. His mastery of Wing Chun went beyond physical strength. It was about understanding the art on a deeper, almost philosophical level. By the time he was in his 50s and 60s, IP Man had reached a point where his movements were almost effortless. He didn't need to overpower anyone physically because his techniques were so refined. His strikes were so precise that they didn't require much energy. He had reached a level of mastery where he could defeat opponents with minimal movement, often outmaneuvering fighters half his age. This wasn't just a testament to his technical skill, but to his understanding of Wing Chun's core principles. For IP Man, Wing Chun wasn't just about fighting, it was a way of life. It was about staying calm, staying focused, and always being ready. Even as his body aged, his mind stayed sharp, and his understanding of the martial art only deepened. That's the beauty of Wing Chun. It's not about brute strength or how many hours you can spend in the gym. It's about precision, timing, and understanding the human body. And IP Man mastered all of that to such an extent that even a finger could become a deadly weapon in his hands. Bruce Lee's evolution, from student to innovator. Bruce Lee wasn't always the martial arts icon we remember today. In fact, when he first started, he was more of a scrappy street brawler than a disciplined fighter. His raw talent was undeniable, but it lacked direction and focus. That's where IP Man came in. Under IP Man's guidance, Bruce Lee transformed from a rebellious teenager into a serious martial artist. His time studying Wing Chun didn't just teach him how to fight better, it completely changed his outlook on martial arts. Instead of relying on instinct and aggression, Bruce started to appreciate the importance of technique, discipline, and understanding the philosophy behind each movement. IP Man's approach to Wing Chun was all about precision and efficiency, which was a major shift for someone like Bruce, who had been used to wild, unstructured street fights. He learned how to control his movements, conserve his energy, and fight with purpose rather than raw emotion. Bruce wasn't just throwing punches anymore, he was thinking about every strike, every block, every movement. This new level of discipline began to mold him into a much more refined fighter. Through IP Man, Bruce realized that martial arts wasn't just about winning fights. It was about mastering yourself, controlling your impulses, and becoming more mindful in every aspect of life. But here's the thing, Bruce Lee wasn't someone who liked being confined by tradition. He was a rebel at heart, and while he respected what IP Man taught him, Bruce wasn't content with just following the same path as every other martial artist. After his formal training under IP Man, Bruce began to question some of the rigid structures that came with traditional martial arts. He felt that sticking to just one style, like Wing Chun, was too limiting. Bruce believed that real combat wasn't about adhering to a particular set of rules or forms. It was about adaptability and finding what worked in the moment. This dissatisfaction with tradition led Bruce to create his own martial arts philosophy, Jeet Kune Do. Unlike the more formalized martial arts styles that had been passed down through generations, Jeet Kune Do was all about freedom and expression. Bruce's idea was that a fighter shouldn't be constrained by a single set of techniques or forms. Instead, they should be able to adapt to any situation, using whatever tools were available to them. Jeet Kune Do emphasized practicality over tradition. If something worked in a fight, use it. If it didn't, discard it. This was a radical departure from the martial arts culture of the time, where students were expected to follow strict traditions and never question their master's teachings. What's fascinating, though, is how much of Jeet Kune Do was still influenced by Wing Chun, the very style Bruce was trying to break away from. Wing Chun's core principles, especially its focus on economy of motion and close-quarters combat, became the foundation of Jeet Kune Do. Bruce didn't throw out everything he learned from IP Man. Instead, he built on it. Wing Chun taught Bruce the importance of being efficient with his movements, and that's something he carried over into Jeet Kune Do. The idea of flow was also central to both Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do. In Wing Chun, the goal is to move smoothly from one motion to the next, always staying fluid and adaptable. Bruce took this concept and expanded it in Jeet Kune Do, teaching his students to be like water, fluid, flexible, and able to adapt to any situation. Bruce also borrowed Wing Chun's philosophy of directness in combat. Wing Chun emphasizes attacking in a straight line, taking the shortest path to your opponent, and Jeet Kune Do followed this same principle. Bruce taught that in a real fight, there's no room for unnecessary movements or flashy techniques. Every move should be direct and purposeful. He blended this Wing Chun efficiency with other martial arts styles, creating a system that was uniquely his own. But Jeet Kune Do wasn't just a new fighting style, it was a completely different way of thinking about martial arts. Bruce believed that a true martial artist needed to be able to evolve and adapt constantly. He saw martial arts as an ever-changing thing, something that needed to be flexible and open to innovation. In this way, Jeet Kune Do wasn't just about fighting techniques, it was about personal growth and self-expression. For Bruce, martial arts were a way of life, a philosophy that could be applied to everything from fighting to everyday challenges. Bruce's innovation didn't stop with his personal philosophy. Jeet Kune Do ended up revolutionizing martial arts as a whole. Before Bruce came along, most people in the West saw martial arts as something exotic and mysterious, practiced only in far-off lands. But Bruce changed that. Through his films and teachings, he made martial arts accessible to everyone, breaking down the barriers between East and West. His emphasis on practicality over tradition resonated with a global audience. Suddenly, people weren't interested in memorizing traditional forms. They wanted to learn how to fight effectively in real-life situations. Bruce showed the world that martial arts could be fluid, adaptable, and practical, something that could evolve with the times rather than being stuck in the past. What Bruce Lee did with Jeet Kune Do was nothing short of revolutionary. He took what he had learned from IP Man and Wing Chun and completely transformed it into something new, something that challenged the rigid traditions of martial arts. Jeet Kune Do was Bruce's way of saying that martial arts should be about freedom, about personal expression, and about finding what works best for each individual. His legacy lives on today, not just in the martial arts community, but in popular culture as a whole. Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do continues to influence fighters, actors, and everyday people who see martial arts as a path to self-discovery and empowerment. The teacher-student bond, IP Man's lasting influence on Bruce Lee. When people talk about Bruce Lee, they often focus on his speed, his strength, and the way he revolutionized martial arts. But behind that incredible talent was a man who shaped Bruce's early journey. Ip Man. Their relationship went beyond just physical training. IP Man wasn't just teaching Bruce how to fight. He was showing him how to think, how to approach martial arts as more than just a series of punches and kicks. For IP Man, martial arts were deeply philosophical, and that's what he passed on to Bruce. It's this philosophy that transformed Bruce from a skilled fighter into a martial artist with depth and purpose. One of the most important lessons Bruce learned from IP Man was the importance of balance. Physical balance, of course, but also emotional and mental balance. IP Man believed that a martial artist had to be calm, controlled, and composed, no matter the situation. He taught Bruce that fighting wasn't just about winning, it was about mastering yourself, staying centered even in the face of chaos. Bruce absorbed these lessons, and they became a core part of his own martial arts philosophy. You can see this influence in Bruce's later work, especially in his iconic quote, "Be water, my friend." That's pure IP Man right there. Adaptability, fluidity, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Despite Bruce Lee's meteoric rise to fame, he never forgot where he came from. Even after becoming a global superstar, Bruce always acknowledged the role IP Man played in his life. He didn't just see IP Man as some old teacher he had moved past, he saw him as a lifelong mentor. In interviews and public statements, Bruce often paid homage to IP Man, crediting him for laying the foundation of his martial arts journey. Even when Bruce went on to develop his own martial arts philosophy with Jeet Kune Do, he made it clear that Wing Chun and IP Man were central to his growth. This wasn't just lip service. Bruce truly respected IP Man, recognizing that without his training, he might not have become the martial artist he was. Their bond wasn't just personal, it had a cultural impact that rippled across the globe. The relationship between IP Man and Bruce Lee transcended martial arts, influencing cinema, pop culture, and even the way martial arts were perceived in the West. Bruce's success in Hollywood introduced martial arts to a Western audience that had little knowledge of its deeper philosophies. Suddenly, people weren't just watching Bruce Lee, they were learning about Wing Chun, and by extension, about IP Man. The IP Man films that came out years later, starring Donnie Yen, further cemented the legendary status of this relationship. They showed the world the depth of the bond between master and student, giving audiences a glimpse into how IP Man's teachings shaped Bruce Lee's iconic journey. The cultural impact of this relationship can't be overstated. In a way, IP Man and Bruce Lee became symbols of the bridge between East and West, traditional and modern, teacher and student. Their influence is felt not just in martial arts schools, but in films, TV shows, and popular culture worldwide. The respect Bruce had for IP Man was mutual, and that mutual admiration helped forge a legacy that would inspire millions for generations to come. IP Man's challenges in Hong Kong, a fight for survival. IP Man's move to Hong Kong wasn't exactly a smooth transition. By the time he arrived in the bustling city in 1949, he was already in his mid-50s, and life was far from easy. In fact, this was one of the most challenging periods of his life. With the political climate in China changing drastically after the communist takeover, IP Man, who had been aligned with the nationalists, was forced to leave his home in Foshan and start over in Hong Kong. But starting over wasn't easy. He had no real source of income, and his years of working as a police officer in Foshan didn't hold much weight in this new city. To make matters worse, he was battling a personal demon, an addiction to opium. This addiction not only affected his health, but also strained his finances as the cost of feeding the habit took its toll. Despite these personal struggles, IP Man never gave up on his passion for Wing Chun. At first, he kept his martial arts knowledge under wraps, hesitant to teach in a city filled with so many competing martial arts schools. But soon enough, his reputation began to spread, and he started teaching Wing Chun to a small group of students at a restaurant workers association. These early students weren't exactly who you'd expect. Many were working-class men who had little formal education, but they were eager to learn self-defense, especially in a city where street fights and gang violence were all too common. Even though money was tight and life was tough, IP Man's teaching started gaining traction. The Hong Kong martial arts scene was competitive, but Wing Chun's effectiveness in close combat situations helped it stand out. Over time, his school began to grow. Some of his students, like Wang Shun Leung, became incredibly skilled and went on to teach Wing Chun themselves, spreading the art across the city and beyond. One of the most famous of these students was, of course, Bruce Lee, who would later bring Wing Chun and IP Man's legacy to a global audience. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Financially, IP Man continued to struggle. His school wasn't always packed, and many students came and went, unable to afford long-term lessons. There were times when he had to move his school to cheaper locations just to keep things afloat. However, IP Man never stopped teaching. He believed in Wing Chun deeply, and his dedication to passing on the art was unwavering despite the hardships he faced. In his later years, IP Man's health began to decline, partly due to his opium addiction. Yet, even as his body weakened, his mind remained sharp, and his commitment to Wing Chun never wavered. He continued teaching well into his old age, ensuring that his knowledge wouldn't die with him. To preserve his legacy, IP Man made sure to pass on his Wing Chun techniques to his sons, IP Chun and IP Ching, who would carry on the family tradition. He also allowed himself to be filmed demonstrating Wing Chun's key forms, including the iconic wooden dummy form. These recordings would later become invaluable, serving as a lasting record of IP Man's mastery. IP Man's late-life achievements were a testament to his perseverance. Despite the personal and financial challenges he faced, he succeeded in building a lasting legacy. His students spread Wing Chun far and wide, and today it's one of the most practiced martial arts in the world. IP Man's influence is still felt, not just in martial arts schools, but in pop culture, where his story continues to inspire people around the globe. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.